ladies and gentlemen, you're in the right place if you're looking to maximize your media, your media presence. And we're going to be talking about strategies for impact in branding and storytelling. And I got two amazing gentlemen with me. The funny thing is I actually had a chance to be a guest on their show. And now this is me not only returning the favor, but passing it on to those that can learn from both Neil and Joe. So Neil A. Carusso is an award-winning journalist and TV producer. He's going to tell you a lot more about himself. And Joe is the news reporter at WCBS News Radio, New York. Both heavily invested in small business and business in general, supporting them and giving them the resources and tools they need to grow. So first of all, Joe, Neil, thank you both for being here today. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome, Jimmy.
Great to be here.
All right. So what I want to do is let's start with Joe. I want you both to introduce yourself briefly and tell us a little bit about yourself, and let's take it from there. So Joe, if you go first, tell us a little bit more about you.
Well, I have been a business news reporter on WCBS News Radio 880 in New York for about 25 years. And before that, I had been a general news reporter in Washington and in New York as well. And I've been in radio since college. And I also got out of the news business for a couple of years, and I went to work as a press secretary for a senator in Washington. And that was one of the best side tricks that I ever took from my career, because I therein learned where the news came from and how it was manufactured. This was the product that I was working with as a news reporter. So now I had seen both sides of the street, and it is some of the experience that I've gained in being pitched stories and in selling stories myself as a press secretary that I look forward to sharing with you for whatever ideas they will give you.
Beautiful. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. And Neil, tell us a little bit about yourself, sir.
Sure. Well, Joe, feels like old times.
Mhm.
Used to be Joe Connolly's producer at CBS, so good to be on the platform with him. And Jimmy, thanks for having us today. I am on set at News Nation. I'm a TV producer here. I also own my own company, which I know we'll get into as well. And Joe and I still work together, so it's pretty cool. We work with a lot of business owners and helping them grow their businesses using a variety of media. But I, go back to college radio too, like Joe, and we talk all the time about just kind of the love of media and how it's evolved over time. And now, because we have smart devices and everyone has can have their own TV network, so to speak. Business owners are using those platforms, Twitter and Instagram, TikTok, and really their phones to maximize growth and to create growth for themselves, both personally and businesses. So that's what I help people with. But also work in the day-to-day of TV news. So fresh out of the control room to join you, Jimmy, today.
Absolutely. Well, I love the background. As I'm looking at both backgrounds, it's like you've got the TV background, Joe. You've got the news background. Like I'm waiting for some guy with a hat with the thing sticking out the side to come by and go, we got to get this in the press.
Joe's in the trenches.
As we say in radio, when we get something wrong, unfortunately, in a story, the saying sometimes is, thank heavens we don't have to worry about pictures too. So I like radio is nice and simple. I can do it pretty much on my own. I don't need a staff of 16 people like Neil has here. And
they're still talking back there.
Yeah, it's quiet on the set.
Absolutely.
Right.
Well, I think you're ending your day there, Neil,
Yes.
right? So, I'm going to ask you to mute for a second, and I'm going to jump to Joe.
Go ahead.
So, Joe, I want to give you the first question here, and I want everyone to kind of know before we even start why we're actually doing this. Part of this is I've actually engaged Neil, and Joe is part of that package to kind of work on making myself and my organization moving forward, small business, media ready. We've laid a lot of groundwork And at the end of the day, we're pretty savvy as business owners, especially if we're leveraging technology, leveraging it in an innovative way, leveraging digital transformation, all these big words you may have heard, but it always comes back down to action and visibility. And one of the things I realized that moving forward, small business needs to do is we need more visibility. And part of that is we could pay for ads and things like that. But I'm like, there's got to be a better way. We feel like we're doing something that's purpose driven, which means that people should care about it. And if people care about it, then people should want to talk about it and share it. And that kind of brought me to the point where, as we start to expand our business and we're moving into different states, I'm like, we need to be better prepared for the opportunity of what we call earned media. You're getting featured in the press, being featured on radio, TV, podcasts, what have you. And I think both Neil and Joe are expertly positioned to talk about, what it is from their perspectives that make you valuable enough or interesting enough to be covered. Because we as business owners sometimes get it wrong and we don't position ourselves properly. So my first question to you, Joe, is based on your extensive experience in news reporting, what makes a business or entrepreneur story newsworthy?
Well, the first thing that comes to mind is two words that you just said, Jimmy. We care about what we're doing. When we get pitched a story, we can sense immediately whether somebody is just reading from the headline of a news release or they are calling and saying, I have this new business here and it is really doing well and we're doing some things differently from what other people did. You're not reading, you're talking.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, I'm jumping ahead in some of the points that I was going to make. I was talking recently to a business owner who has a new environmental product, and he smartly has retained an ad agency in New Jersey to help him get press. And I've seen a number of people do this. But I told him at an event the other night, I said, that's great. Let them look for opportunities for you. But when it comes to making the pitch, you, the business owner, call and make it yourself, not somebody experienced or inexperienced, whoever it may be, at an agency, because nobody can talk about a business like the business owner. So when you call the press, you want to make what is called an elevator speech, but not the elevator speech you'd make to a customer, but the elevator speech that you would make to a news reporter. Boil down the lead, 2 or 3 sentences. Another thing that I like to say, in terms of getting press with the national media, big media, New York Times, Wall Street Journal, Washington Post, follow that publication that you are targeting for a period of time, a couple months too. And when you find an article that has been written in one of the big media or TV that is really accurate and a real good story about your industry, call the reporter. The byline will be on it. And like anybody, reporters like to get response and a compliment and say, I run Smith Valve Company here in Maryland, and I really thought your story the other day, if it was really right on track. I'd like to tell you about something like that, but different than we're doing on this new environmental movement. Reporters' ears perk up, new and different. They have a response now. They're getting interest. Tell me about that. What are you doing? And so you're not calling out of the blue to the desk assistant who answers on the phone and says, yeah, hello, and they get a pitch, and they shout across the newsroom, somebody's online about their new bakery in New York. Are you interested? No. It's just a waste of time. Right. So you call the reporter, Another thing that's nice to do to show that you understand them is to say, I really thought your story was excellent, or there was something wrong about it. But if you have a minute, if you're not on deadline, can I just tell you quickly about what we are doing? Saying if you are not on deadline, Neil, I think, can verify this, will really raise the reporter's estimation of you because you're being curious. You're not going to talk for 20 minutes. You're sensitive to their time. That's it. You know about red flags? That's a real green flag that somebody wants to talk to you. I have some more, but I don't want to talk too long.
Yeah, it looks like Neil wants to jump in. So, Neil, I'm going to let you continue because it's not like you want to jump in on this particular question.
It's interesting because I think that goes for both, journalists, pitching journalists, and also for clients. Like, you want to respect people's time. So, and flattery will get you everywhere. So, complimenting a story, I think Joe and I would be very happy about that. But, for us, like, we get pitched every day, all day. My inbox is cluttered. So I think you need to come up with something, like Joe said, new and interesting. This is something, I got a pitch today that was actually interesting. It just wasn't a 4-hour show, but you send me a couple of lines like, hey, this is in the news. The president announced this today. And I'm an expert and I can speak to that. Give me a couple of lines, give me a couple of bullet points, what you would speak to. And that's part of the training that Joe and I are doing, is helping people, like, this is how you get attention, because you can't just be an expert in everything, know your area of expertise. So if you are, an accountant, for example, you're not necessarily doing corporate and personal taxes. Stick with what you know. And if you are a doctor, you're not doing colonoscopies one day and doing, eye exams the next day. Know your area of expertise, and then just be succinct in that pitch. Because we're all running a mile a minute in our day to day.
Yeah, and what I'm hearing from both of you in this aspect are things that should be pretty foundational in any business, around understanding who your competition is, and being able to do competitive analysis, market analysis, to do that one thing that really perked my ears up that Joe, you said, and Neil, you jumped on top of, was, I like what you did, but here's where I can add more value to that. Here's where it's different. And I've never done that. So, that's immediately going in my checkbook here, because I'm like, okay, there's my angle of how I can continue to add more value to that existing storyline that's already taking place and unfolding.
When I became a business reporter on WCBS, some people who are still in touch with me today, who I've quoted multiple times over the years, called me my first 2 or 3 months as the business reporter and said, hey, I like your report. You mentioned this, we're doing something like that here. Can I just, before we go further, run down a couple of examples that I had prepared to open with before I went off on Jimmy's key phrase of care about? Can I just give a couple quick examples?
No, absolutely.
Yeah, okay. So these are just examples of how to think about getting press for your business. Mm-hmm. And if the press doesn't bite, remember, you can write this story yourself and post it on your own website, on your own LinkedIn, on your own social media. The press is the topping of the menu. But here are a couple of examples of ways to think just from today's news alone. For instance, if, let's just say you sell sporting goods equipment, or run a community, or represent as an ad agency, a local sports organization or something. The WNBA season starts tonight. Disney Plus announced today that they will stream Caitlin Clark's WNBA debut in Disney's first live sports event ever. So that gives you an angle, maybe, to call the local TV, radio station, newspaper, and say, let me tell you how Caitlin Clark's stardom is affecting the sports and goods business here in our community already. And you tie into the Caitlin Clark story.
Okay,
or how
like
it's
that.
helping your local teams. And then while you're at it, if you write a news release, give them more hooks. A hook is something interesting that gathers interest. You could also, while you're at it, say how the Little League baseball season went here in our county and how the lacrosse and football seasons look coming up. Ride the news. And inflation is becoming a big story. So that leaves you an opening to think of ways to do stories about how you are keeping prices lower, yet still selling high quality products. If you were a realtor, you could do a news release or offer a story on how to get around high mortgage rates. So those are just a couple things in today's news.
And I like that because you're really giving us the ability to be more spontaneous and think and integrate yourself into something, because that's genius with the whole Caitlin, I forget her name, but
Caitlin Clark, yeah.
Because I am seeing her in the news, but then you can also look at it from, and it's crazy to bring her up, but the Taylor Swift and how she's able to bring a lot of revenue into specific areas. So if I was in the music industry, specifically around products or services, not just a musical artist myself, how I could leverage even that type of same scenario. So I think that's amazing. So let me jump over to Neil then, and let's kind of dive into the narration around the story. So how do you, so you work with clients to help them get into the news. So how do you approach narrating the brand story to ensure it resonates with the wide audience and even with skeptics?
Yeah, I mean, I think you go back to what Joe said before, and you want to be your best advocate. You know your business better than anyone, and it's telling that story in your own way. I think too often people are very scripted; they write things out, and it doesn't come across genuine. And so, for example, I had a client shoot a couple of weeks ago, and her best takes were when we were just talking. And to be honest, we were talking in the kitchen. I was like, this is the video, and so you draw that out and you want someone to be as personable and themselves as possible. And frankly, the more that you talk to clients, the more that you're on the phone every day. And I know we're great at texting and we're great at social media, but I think the more you have that face-to-face conversation with people, the better communicator you are. And then it's easy because I look in the camera like, to me, I'm looking at a person. And that's how you need to be when you are, recording content. You need to really pretend like you are talking to another person. And that was an old trick, actually, that a mentor, the late Ed Ingalls, gave me a tip there. So if you're telling a sports story, who are you talking to? If you're telling a business story, talk to someone different. And to this day, I do that. A lot of times I pretend I'm talking to Joe still, whether it's a business story or if I'm talking sports, I'm talking straight to my dad. So, those are things you want to do. And that makes you more personable and it makes you come across as natural and real. And you are. You have to ignore that the camera's there.
Yeah, and I can definitely vouch for that. Being a speaker, when I first started my career speaking, I was definitely very focused on my outline and my script and making sure I said anything. And now I don't. I couldn't care less. I just show up. But then that's practice. That's repetitiveness and doing it over and over again, even if you think you're getting tired of it. But, because you're always afraid that you're not saying everything that you want to say. And I guess that's probably what you two run into when you're trying to work with someone to go, slow down. You don't have to tell me everything.
I mean, I think we do that in our day to day and in news too. Sometimes you want to get everything in there and you just can't. And we're limited by a clock. So, you have 2 minutes to tell a story and we're limited to that. And I think that helps keep things succinct. You want to be brief. And also, when you talk, like when I write scripts, it's talking to someone, as if there was no script. You wouldn't say, according to the Wall Street Journal. Go ahead, be yourself, tell a story, and that's how it is for businesses too. It's tell your story, be as genuine and authentic as possible, and you can have fun with that too. And I think testing boundaries is good, and learning how to have fun with it. Because it doesn't have to be like, oh, I got to shoot content today. It could be fun. And that's the way it should be. And tell, what is your business? Is it lifestyle? Is it sporting goods? Whatever it may be. But have fun. Show the passion. That's the reason why you started that company.
Yeah, and I think it's probably, Go ahead, Joe.
Neil and I did a story once, speaking of speaking, and whether it's pitching a story or speaking to an audience. We did a story once, you remember, Neil, with a Broadway actor.
Yes.
And we asked him, he played a lot of big roles on Broadway. And I said, what do you do? Do you ever get nervous on stage or afraid you're going to forget your lines? What do you do if you get nervous and flustered on stage? How do you recover? And he said, you tune everything out except what you want to say. Often you're focusing on the audience reaction and all that, but if you get messed up and you're losing your place, zero in, forget everybody else, forget the camera, and just think about what you want to say.
Okay. Now, we talked about us trying to get access to you. How much do you two do as far as outreach when you want to cover something? Who do you go to?
Yeah, so you mean in terms of covering a story?
Yeah, so you say you come up with a story that you want to cover, and now you need to go source the leads, I guess.
So I'm old school, and I did learn a lot, when I worked with Joe at CBS, and I remember my first week here in News Nation, we had some story I forget what it was, but I had to call like several police departments, and I just picked up the phone, and I think there's nothing wrong with that. Too often people send emails, they, try to go through social media, and all those tools are great. I still am old fashioned. I'll pick up the phone and do that. And if you can get someone on the phone and explain to them, hey, we're trying to get the word out, trying to cover the story, trying to help your community. That's what we do. And you have to, in terms of the news business, you look at it as a public service. That's how I've always kind of approached it. But outreach and for businesses, leads, it's all about, how can you help the other person as well? Like the Jerry Maguire line, help me help you. And I think that goes a long way. Is, what can I do to help you and serve your needs? And at the same time, like, this is what I offer, because you can't be great at everything. And so, I've learned from great business owners, from great journalists, you play to your strengths. For me, that's content, that's telling stories. And then if, in terms of social media, I can be great at social media. I'm great at marketing myself, but you know what? It takes a lot of time. I don't mind having someone else do the post for me, because I'm better at creating the stories that are the vehicle to go and post that.
Jimmy, in terms of sourcing, I'll do one of two things. And usually you're sourcing in the sense you're talking about pretty quickly on breaking news. You don't plan 2 or 3 days ahead. One is I Google the topic, and I'll take a real quick look at various news stories on that topic and stand fast for quotation marks of somebody who has been quoted. I don't want to get into politics and news media, but quoted in the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, Washington Post, or some respectable publication, and says something that makes me think they know what the heck they're talking about, and I will call them. And the reason I use the news quote clippings as a source is because that means that some other reporter has at least vetted them to some degree. I'm not calling some guy down the street, okay? And the other thing is that after you've been doing this for a while, when something breaks, I'm glad to say that I almost always knew somebody to call, because I've covered so many businesses, and I know somebody in almost every industry who's a trusted source who I can call. So Google and call.
And I can actually validate that first one, because I developed a relationship, and I'll say it was with the vice president of sponsorship for the SCORE Foundation.
Mm-hmm.
Reached out to me, and when I asked how they found me, it was from a quote from a press release that was through another partner that I did a lot of work for that was under the SBA. So, and what I'm getting at here for you as small business owners is this is a multi-tiered approach. There's no one specific thing. And we can talk about a little bit more about that, where they think, oh, it's the press release that's going to get us the attention. Oh, it's that single news appearance on television or radio or in the newspaper that's going to be that one hit wonder for you. It's never just that. There has to be a foundation under that. So you want to kind of jump in on that and talk about, how do we leverage this exposure when we actually do get it and not blow it?
Right. I mean, it's everything, like you said. It's not just one thing. And so, for example, in the newsroom here, a lot of times in the morning as we're planning out the show, the big question that comes up, are they good on TV? Have they been on TV before? And it doesn't have to be traditional TV. It could be videos. And we look at people's social media and see, do they speak well? Do they come across well? And those are things that, like, we're not going to throw someone on cable TV if they don't have that experience. How do you get experience? It's one of those catch-22s, right? So that's where kind of Joe and I are helping people. And it came out of really a need where people start calling me and say, hey, can you help me with my pitches? And so Joe and I are helping business owners with creating their portfolios. And a media kit is what we created in January, where we're actually helping business owners, training them, but also giving them an interview and saying, okay, this is what it's like to be interviewed on TV, and then coaching them through that process. And then they can put that on their YouTube and on their website. And the best ones are able to, send it to people when that story is relevant. So like I said earlier, if you're an expert in one area, have a clip ready, and we may need you. So if you're a lawyer, you're probably in high demand right now with multiple cases going on, high profile cases. And so if you're able to speak to that on a defense side or prosecution side, give me 30 seconds, give me a minute. It doesn't have to be 20 minutes, and we cut those clips for you and say, okay, these are relevant clips that you could post on your social media, but send this to booking producers. And when your time comes, when there's a topic that's relevant, then you can pitch that. But that's a big thing for us. It's like, are they good on TV? Can they speak well? And same thing in radio. We do look at that, and we did it at WCBS. Joe and I had 300 interviews we did in a series that we had on CBS for 6 years. And so when we did that, we would look at their background. Can they speak well? I would do a pre-interview, or booking producers here do that too. So it's all about getting practice and putting yourself out there and amplifying your videos on social media so we can find you.
Sure.
And when the producer is talking to you, Neil just referenced pre-interview, you know that's what it is. So be concise. They're not just talking the breeze with you. They're listening closely. So realize that it's a dry one.
We don't say it's a pre-interview. No. We're just talking with you. And in reality, I'm kind of asking questions that, when I produce for Joe, this is what Joe may ask. And so I'm asking questions to see how they'll answer. So it's kind of a test. It's like when you're on a job interview, you don't, the job interview is never over just because you walked out of the office. It's the same thing.
Sure. Well, first of all, let me shout out Laura in Houston and Cindy on Long Island, who are also checking in with
Houston
us.
On Long Island.
Yeah, there you go, right there. and Laura's the bomb, ladies and gentlemen. You need some catering, she's got you. All right. So this reminds me of my first interaction with you. So let me recap the journey. The journey started with a colleague of both of yours, which is Rob Walsh, who yes. I wasn't even on. He did a 30-second spot on my organization. So I wasn't even in the drop. I don't know if that's what they call it, but I'm going to call it the drop. And I got contacted by Joe because of the drop. And Joe was like, hey, I'd be interested in talking to you about the business, and I want you to meet my producer, Neil. And then when I got on, I did the because Neil asked a lot of questions. I was like, man, I better know this stuff, and because as you described it, I'm going, hey, you did that to me.
Yeah. Now you know the tricks. Now you know the tricks behind the scenes.
That's cool.
But it's reassuring.
Yeah.
And it lets you know your stuff. And as a business owner, you do.
Yes.
But it really is about positioning. Go ahead, Joe.
No, I was just saying yes. Absolutely.
I think it makes you more comfortable too, as a person who's being interviewed. Even preparation for this, we had a call a couple of weeks ago. Like I knew kind of the direction you wanted to go, so it's easy, at that point. And the best producers do that. And our team here is great at giving pre-interviews that make the guests feel like, okay, I know the direction I need to speak towards. Also being succinct. I can't say that enough, because if you go on and well, that may be so interesting to you, and probably I'll probably get faults on this webinar, but for most people, you want to get to the point. And that's something that we coach people, consistently on.
And a
Right.
lot of businesses and nonprofits have stories right in front of them that they don't recognize because they're not reporters. They're not going to recognize them. So one way to tell what might be the basis of a news release and social media post for you is whatever people pick up on. When you tell them about your business, what's the question they always ask you? Therein may be a topic right there for a news release. And I just give another example. I recall I met a woman who ran a nonprofit organization. We were talking, and I said, "Well, what do you do?" And she started with we're a 403(b) public-private partnership. My eyes started to glaze over. I said, "Oh man, why do they start talking here?" Then, as we get into it, I said, "Well, for instance, like, what do you do, really?" And she said, "Well, she said, last week we were really happy. We got a single mother of 3 children a job in a bank." I said, wait a minute. That's a story for your local newspaper, not with the woman's family name or anything. That's a great story. Middlesex County Youth Services finds mom of 3 job in bank. That's great PR. And it's an uplifting story. It's a nice story. And I think that didn't do the story. So, just listen to what people respond to as you talk. That may be the topic of your next news release.
Yeah, and I can vouch for that too. I've had conversations as I've tried to explain moving forward small business. I like to think that I'm getting better at it. But I was having a conversation maybe about 6 months ago with the gentleman, and halfway through I said something, and his eyes lit up, and his response to me was, "Next time, lead with that."
Wow.
I go, you don't get that clear of a message, then next time lead with that. And I took that to heart, and I use that because, like you said, sometimes we're too close to the process, and we can't see because we're stuck in the fog.
Yeah, 100%.
That's a great line we could use in the newsroom, Neil. Next time, lead with that.
I agree. Lead with that. Don't bury the lead.
Don't bury the lead. So let's dive into the professional media side of things. And the reason why I think this is important is because we now live in the user-generated content era. I don't even use half of my professional equipment anymore because my phone is good enough, my microphone is decent enough, this and that. But there still comes a time when you need to go professional. You're going to need to spend some money. If you think of some of the biggest people on the planet, they don't do their own stuff. And of course, they have the resources to do that. But what is the true value of true professional media production?
Yeah, I think it's, from what I see with clients, it's in order to get the best product shots, it's in order to get that media attention. So take it back just a couple of weeks ago to that shoot I referenced earlier. With them, it was a multitude of things. It was, she's got customers, she has a B2B. And so we have different audiences. And so you want to target those people, and you could shoot it in so many different ways. And because we have, honestly, there's so many talented videographers on my team that we can pivot and do things for different formats. So if it's just social media, we can do it in a cost-effective way. If you're looking, to get on to TV, we're going to do it in a bigger scale. But I think you just kind of cater it to the person, to their business. What are your needs? And it doesn't, you don't need to spend tens of thousands of dollars on that. But if you get an audience, on television, you have to think about the legs that that's going to have, and the social media hits and all of that. So you have to figure out what that attention is worth to you. And then in terms of, just content afterwards, you want to put yourself out there. You want to show your brand. So if it's a product, you want to get great product photos, because lighting and all that stuff, it does matter at the end of the day. what you're putting out. But you don't have to, like you said, we have phones, we have the ability to do that. It's the storytelling really that matters, and that's a combination because obviously people are watching on their phones. But if it's dark, if it's not well lit enough, it's not professional. As you scale your business, that's going to show.
Mhm. In radio, the equivalent of bad pictures is droning on. And I work with companies sometimes on their podcasts, and sometimes I host podcasts for companies. But you really have to beware of droning on. And you, as the host of the podcast, if you do a podcast, you can't let somebody go on just to be nice. Because any listeners are leaving, going to be intent and say, well, why? Well, why did you say that? How did you do that? Well, what did you think? Tell them, never give somebody else the microphone when you
All
are
right, I'm going to have to cut you off right now. No, I'm just kidding. Go
Now,
ahead.
there you go. There you go. Hey, you know why?
And the best,
And that was good
best,
because I was through with the point. That was perfect.
yeah,
That's what I
sometimes
meant.
pauses are good too, by the way.
Yeah. As someone who does interviews, it is hard when I am talking to someone who doesn't breathe.
Yeah.
Because you're looking for that moment to cut in so you can make it an interesting and a dialogue and a bit of going back and forth. So let's talk about impact. What is the, I guess we get the impact for the business owner. The impact is they get visibility, they get an opportunity to get this story heard. What is the impact that the organization, the news outlet gets? So these business owners, me included, can be more in tune to making sure that we're giving as much as we're trying to receive.
It's a great question. So for us, again, we're doing community of service. So I'm always thinking about the audience, right? Who are you trying to reach? So no matter what the story is, we're looking for an expert in an area that's going to add value. So again, whatever topic it may be, you're thinking about the audience. What do they care about? What's most pertinent to them? What's important to their day-to-day lives? So if the story is medical, which is a great, example there, we're going to ask questions that the audience would care about. So in turn, as a business owner, if you run a medical company, then you need to think about, okay, what are those questions that they want to know, that my patients would want to know, and just get those points in your head, and those are the ones that you rattle off.
Another way,
Okay.
Jimmy, is to call sometimes and be a tipster of sorts and don't want to be quoted. Saying, I'm just calling to tell you, I heard something really interesting between you and me, that such and such company may be moving out of the city, and I just got that passing on in case you want to check it out. That's a good way to build credibility and trust, because you're actually asking not to be quoted. You're just being a news source.
Sure. And that kind of actually brings me to my next question, which you kind of answered before, but I want to ask it as an actual question is, how do you become a repeat source? Are there things you look for in that individual that, because I guess it could be hard if your beat is really about the latest breaking news.
Yeah, find a niche, and stick with that. And I think, just the right pitch at the right time. It's all timing. But Joe and I both have people that are our go-tos, in whatever area it may be. And so if I'm looking for a cybersecurity expert, I have the top 3 people on my phone. They're coded in my phone. I need a terrorism expert. I need anybody, a doctor. I have, top 3. And so you want to be on that top 3. It's establishing credibility. It is, going on there and getting better each time. In a way, you're performing, just as you are in business. You're marketing every day. You are a performer when you're on TV, and you want to do a good job. You want to be engaging. And again, pretending that the camera isn't there, talking right to the person, and giving good information, being knowledgeable, being credible, all of that stuff is important. And it's not so easy. I mean, I know a lot of people that they freeze when the camera goes on them, or they have a lot of stammering when they're speaking. You want to really work on that. And that's where kind of, we've come in this year and helping these professionals like, hey, this is how you want to talk about your business. Forget about the cameras that's there. This is how you can add value. So, you give me a topic and I'll tell you what my expert is. And that's my first phone call. You want to be that person, just establish that credibility over time.
And not a short answer, kind of wise, that I would give to your question is don't call more than once every 6 weeks or 2 months. Because if you have a relationship, they know you now. If you did well or pretty good, they remembered you. You're in their mind. So don't call too often. And then if you have something that you're not certain about, but you think they might be interested in, send that producer an email, maybe instead of a phone call. Hey, if you have any interest in this, I could work something up for you and be ready to do it if you like. Would you agree with that, Neil? Sometimes
I
emails
would. I think
call.
completely agree.
Yeah.
I think it's being persistent but not annoying. And I have some people that email me every day on a variety. I'm like, what is this person even an expert on? I see certain emails from people, I just don't even open it, to be honest.
Okay.
Joe and I used to have a thing at CBS. I would say to Joe very few times. I think I only said 3 times in my 6 years that we worked together. And I would say, that person's dead to me. They overstep their bounds in some way. And if they don't give me credible information, if they're reaching out to me every day, I will never pick up the phone for that person again. So I think Joe makes a good point there in that, you don't want to be over the top. I think there's a fine balance there.
Related to that reminds me of a case we were going over some guests for the next 6 weeks. And it was somebody who was pretty well regarded, pretty well known. And we were thinking about having them back for the second time in maybe 4 or 5 or 6 months. And I said, now, you know what? I don't remember a thing that this person said the time we had them on.
Be memorable. Yeah.
I didn't remember a thing that the person said, so now we won't go back. We'll find someone else.
Sure. Yeah. So there's a lot to have to think about.
Yeah.
And I like that because, we talk about persistence and being a business owner, but that has to be applied to the right scenario and the right situation. And in the situation where we're trying to get earned media, we have to get earned respect from the people we're trying to connect with and figure out, well, what is that line? And, when you said 6 weeks to 2 months, I'm loving that because I would have thought it would have been less. So I would have been making a very.
There are gray areas. I feel like I don't think that's a hard rule, Joe. Like
no.
If there's an ongoing story, or obviously, if you're a prosecutor right now, I mean, you want to be out there. I get that, but reaching out every week on something is just going to kind of make people's eyes roll.
And remember, Jimmy referenced this too. Once you get that news clipping, post that. You could get a video of your video on TV. Post it. Others will see it. I'm telling you that.
And use LinkedIn. LinkedIn
those
is a great
lists
resource.
of past articles that come up are priceless. And Jimmy, you yourself were found by what you said in one of them.
Absolutely. And that's where, so my next question goes, how do you help the clients leverage social media in this aspect with those clips, and what are your recommendations on average?
So there are 2 tiers to what I do in terms of the content. There's the content creation, and then there's a strategy of posting it. And so, there's a lot of thought that needs to go into strategy. It's not as simple as just posting it out there. There's times a day, there's, there are all these tricks that you can do, hashtags people talk about. I think that's less appealing now, or less important now, as it is just, time of day and finding the right sweet spot in terms of who your target is. For my business, LinkedIn is gold. And that's how you can network. And for business owners out there, like, connect with booking producers on LinkedIn, connect with producers in media if you're looking to get on media. I think that's important. And then post your clips. I actually had a business owner tell me a couple of months ago that an interview that we did with her, that Joe and I did with her back in 2018, maybe it was, or 2019, is still top 5 ranked on her site. And it has driven so much traffic to her website to this day, which amazes me because I would think that the interview is old by now, but it was a very visual story. I would spend, Joe knows I had a desk in a corner, not as beautiful as this, set. And I would be huddled back there and spend maybe 4 hours editing, video for one episode of our small business spotlight that Joe and I worked on together. And it showed, and people still reach out and say, "Hey, I saw you, on CBS." And so those are things that, first of all, make me smile. And I think number 2, if you have a really good story, get that clip. We cut clips for guests on our shows. Get those clips, use that. It could be 10 years down the line and it may still be relevant. And maybe a good minute there.
Sure. And that's funny. And I'll go back to what Joe said about my clip, because again, going back to the small business owner, we get busy and we don't do everything we're supposed to do, even if we accomplish certain aspects of our goals, including getting featured on TV or in the radio or whatnot. So I was featured on radio and I almost didn't get that clip out because I was busy.
Yeah.
And so God forbid I didn't actually post it, this conversation that we're having today actually wouldn't even be happening. 1, and 2, of course, I wouldn't have been featured on your show, which was amazing. And it's an ego thing. It's an ego boost for us because I happen to be chairing a big conference in Miami when, and I'm like, look, I'm at a conference in Miami. Can I just wait till I get back? And you're like, I don't really care. We could do it in Miami. Yeah. And then I said, well, let me use it to impress the conference people. And they're like, you're being interviewed on WCBS. And I'm like, yeah, put your logo. And so I was able to milk it. And it strengthens my relationship with them. And these people fly me all over the world. I'm in London for them next month. And again, this is where there's so many different, there's so many different things that can happen.
That's a great example. Yeah. Maybe you better bring us with you. We'll really ham it up with the microphones and the lights with you if you bring us with. That's a great example, though, Terry.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, we can definitely do the thing.
Yeah, so, those things I love hearing. And Jimmy, also that speaks to being in your element, right? Like I remember when we interviewed you, you were very much in your element. You were in your, had your game face on. That's what people want to see on social media. By the way, behind the scenes content works great. And so I always, if I'm on set, I'm always taking photos behind the scenes and I give them to the client because those are things that people want to see. Like, this is how the sausage is made. People always ask me, I can't sit at a Thanksgiving dinner without being the focus of attention because people want to know, what's it like working in media? What's it like working in TV? Well, what's it like running a business? You're doing that every day. And people want to know, what does it take to make your product? I did a shoot during COVID with a group of women who own a product that they had just moved their factory, and I wanted to get video in the factory, and we did that, and we showed, this is American manufacturing, and this is what it's like to make a bottle and put a label on it, and put the chemicals in. So that's, if you have a visual business, you need to tell it. And if you don't, you need to find a way to tell it because people love to know what happens behind the scenes. Even if it's just a couple of quick tips today, if you have a professional services firm or something like that, I think that eventually will get traction. It may be slow at first, eventually it builds.
And that's a good point because I was going to ask, a lot of us now are working from home. My office was canned during COVID. And so it's not like I can get behind the scenes footage in my house, so it's exactly. But I always want to get some, if I had a storefront, it's easy to get foot traffic and things like that. But as a consultant, how do I do that? And you did and I think what you said, doing the tips and things like that is just another way of being visual.
Yeah, 100%. And that's why TikTok's popular, right? I'm not on TikTok, and I know there's, it may get banned in 30 days, but it's that's the kind of content that you can do. Like, hey, these are 3 things about what I'm doing today, or 3 ways to help people, or whatever it may be. Put captions on there. And that's where, we come in, we can do that, pretty cost effectively and pretty quickly. And there are tools. I know you use some AI tools, and everyone thinks so daunting, but there are practical ways I know that people use it. So yeah, I think just thinking outside the box, how can I reach more people? That's the sales generator.
Another thing to sell that sells is solutions. Whatever solution you're coming up with in your company, that may be worth a news release. When I started to cover business news instead of the general news, I immediately loved it because I love being around business owners, because they see solutions, they see opportunities, they see problems, and they fix them. And it was such a pleasant change from covering Congress. And, I went to an SBA event a couple of weeks ago and was reminded of this, how much I like being around business owners, because to me, they're very positive, they're solutions oriented. And that was one of the secrets to my success on radio in New York, is that instead of running every morning a list of all the problems, I said, this company is doing this about that. This company doing this about that. Give us some hope. Give us some solutions. And they play well.
Wow. That's amazing. And I hope every single business that is either listening to this live or watching this on recording repeats what Joe just said, because you just described having a SWOT analysis and doing a damn good job of understanding what that is. And that in itself could be a huge positioner for you for everything from getting new clients to getting featured in the news. So,
and one of the biggest things too about news coverage on the radio is that if you do ads, and I do ads sometimes for businesses, news like ads, but if a radio ad or radio spot may not bring you new business, might or might not, what it really does is it reconfirms your reputation with all of your existing clients, because they say, wow, that's my woman, or that's my guy who's on ABC or NBC. Wow, they found him. Now, the sequence of how we found people. Sometimes it's dumb luck, but they think, wow, they found my guy who does my taxes.
Sure.
I'm staying with him. So, he must be the guy. Let's get reinforcement.
Sure. So let me pause, because we could talk for hours. We're already 4 minutes till.
By the way, I love how passionate Joe has been in this business for way longer than me. And I love how animated he still is. That passion, and that's the passion that we see in business too, right? It's like I see that with you, Jimmy, and I think Jimmy and I had a lunch one day that went on 5 hours. But it's that passion, that seeps through. So I love seeing that in Joe, and I'm sure people who are watching feel the same way, and they're eager to grow their business, right? It's all about sales, and so there are so many tricks of doing that. So you just have to find what works for you.
One of the reasons I'm not on TV is I'm waving my arms around.
That's all right. Because if you fly, that's going to be a news story. Okay. So, ladies and gentlemen, we hope you're enjoying this. This was amazing. I didn't see any major questions come through. I'm going to give you at least a minute or two. If you want to drop a question or two in for Neil or Joe, please do it now, or do it in the post, and we will figure out a way to make sure we answer this question for you. We want to continue this dialogue. So the first thing I want to do is, Neil, Joe, how do people connect with you? And again, understanding, ladies and gentlemen, don't abuse the opportunity. So I know they're not going to say it. I'm going to say it, because this is a privilege to be able to reach out and connect with someone that has the potential to get you in front of a huge audience with your message.
Yeah, I love hearing from people. I've served as a lot of people's gatekeepers, including Joe, so you can contact me and get connected with both of us. But if you want to reach out to me, I think LinkedIn is a great way. So just my name there, as you see on the screen. So Neil A. Carusso. Use the middle initial because I have a lot of Neils in my family. But LinkedIn is a great way. My website is CarussoEnterprises.com. My last name, by the way, is spelled differently. So CARUSSO Carousso. And you can see everything there, services and all of that. And I think Jimmy's pulling it up there. He's got it on his website as well. So you can see services, examples, and I'd love to hear from you. And if you are in need of media training or production, we can talk it out for sure. Getting connected with Joe as well. So would love to hear from you. And Jimmy, thank you for having us today.
Absolutely. Joe?
Yeah, I'm happy to be reached through Neil. I'm on LinkedIn as well. But the best and simplest way to reach me is an email that I use, biznewsideas@gmail.com. BIZNEWS ideas@gmail.com. And Jimmy could forward an email too.
And let me tell you something, Jimmy. I get the coolest people on the planet right now. They're giving you access to them, and Joe gives you an email address. You don't even have to use a scraper to try to find him. So I dropped in the chat a link. This is a page we created. We're going to have this replay video here. I've got Neil's company here. We have a service where for as low as $29, we'll do a press release for you. You couple that with working with Neil. And we have some other stuff. And if you're interested in checking out membership with Moving Forward Small Business, we have a monthly and yearly plan, and we're doing a code. If you use Media 2024, you can get 30% off before the end of the day today and 20% off by the end of the week. So I'll send out an email, but I'll list this on LinkedIn. But check it out. You'll have access. I'll actually put your LinkedIn's on here as well, gentlemen, when we're done here. And again, I'll drop this into the chat for everyone. And I want to thank you both tremendously from the bottom of my heart for you sharing your insight, because it's one thing for me to talk about media and trying to get earned media, then another thing in having actual media people who make these decisions every day give you better guidelines and things that are happening as of today, not something that is past tense.
Thank you for what you are doing, Jimmy. To help a lot of people. Thank you.
Jimmy, I've been very impressed with your business. Great getting to know you and working with you. So appreciate the platform and having us, and thank you.
Absolutely. So any final thoughts? What would be the first step for anyone deciding they need to get some media? What would be the first thing you want them to do?
I think for me, it's, I think you need to take a look at what you have on your social media. Take a look at where your goals are. And I think that's something you evaluate every day. So, if that's something that you say, hey, look, I think part of the strategy for me to grow revenue is to generate better content, whether it's a product, a service, and also think about your time. I think time is the most valuable, commodity that we have as people. And so if you feel like, I'm tired of social media, I am exhausted by this, I'm tired of having to create content, but I know I need it, that may be, a reason to just reach out, and we can have a conversation and talk about your business. But that would be the first step, is just understand what your needs are. And that makes that conversation a little bit easier too, because then we can look at it and say, okay, what's the best, strategy moving forward, for you? What has worked in the past? And what are some new techniques that we can do to grow your business?
Start by writing about something that's new and interesting in your business. One idea for writing is to imagine that you're writing an email to a friend, and it's easier. It'll flow more easily. So just put a friend's name on it, even though you're going to send it to the press. You won't believe the new discovery we made in highway pavement problems, or whatever it is. And keep it short. Sometimes just speak it and then transcribe yourself. Sometimes magazine writers who have long-term deadlines tell me that the secret that works for them is to just sit down and write fast. Do it fast. Don't agonize. Go back and edit, of course, but write fast.
Don't overthink. That's my biggest problem. Don't overthink.
And whatever you do, do not open or even use the phrase, "We're very excited to announce our new 3.1% bomb," or what,
Yep.
You just took my whole opening away from me.
Yeah, right.
What's up
That
with
was
that,
Jimmy's next
man?
press release.
Now
That was
I
the
got to
first
go
line.
back and change that. Hold on for a second.
Instead of we're excited to announce, here's a new idea to help every business owner in the U.S.
Yeah, right to
But
the
anytime
point.
we
right to
see
the
we're
point.
excited to announce, we know the writer is not excited. And
Okay.
here's
Now
a-
I did get one question in. If we got time, we could answer that real quick. Laura from at Houston Catering and Event Planning asked, "What are your recommendations for local businesses?" And we may have covered that, but I wanted to give an opportunity to if you want to say anything we didn't say.
I'll let
network.
you go first.
Get a story in the local weekly. There's so much less local media around. I think it says she's in New Jersey. Maybe
No, she's in Houston.
Oh,
This was in Houston.
Maybe some local cable TV, local news channel. Just call and ask. Even call the Houston Chronicle or something and ask for the business department or a business reporter. Go back to our advice. Find someone who writes in one of the Houston papers about the business. Call them. Say, you haven't met. I'd like to know what you're interested in. I'm in touch with all kinds of people in all kinds of industries. How can I help you?
I think that's great advice. By the way, I love Houston. I have family in Houston. So shout out. I would also say though that, I understand small businesses. I grew up with small businesses. They are strapped for cash and they go month to month. I think you need to find room in your budget for marketing because a lot of times you're putting all of your cash into the operations of the business. You need to look at marketing as a piece of that. As the operations, because I think that's an afterthought for a lot of businesses and a lot of small businesses. And I work with more mid-sized, but smaller businesses that have approached me, they may go on for 2 months and it's like, wait a minute, ran out of cash, can't go on. And the problem is the strategy is working to bring in clients, but that cash flow is just very tight. So I think find room for marketing because a lot of the best results happen over time. It's not going to be a 30-day thing. It's going to happen over 6 months is when you're going to see the best results and beyond that.
All right. Well, gentlemen, I thank you again for taking us over a little bit, but I wanted to ask that question and I'm glad I did because we got some more great gems here. So ladies and gentlemen, I thank you for joining and listening. If you're watching the replay, thank you for that time as well. Again, check out Joe, check out Neil. We here at Moving Forward Small Business, we have, if you ever watched The Mandalorian, they have a saying. So we have our Mandalorian saying as well. And it is stay active, stay focused, stay strong. That is the Moving Forward Small Business way. So with that being said, gentlemen, I thank you again. Ladies and gentlemen, we hope you enjoyed. Everyone, you are now officially Strategy Line Professionals. Welcome to the club. And we will see you in another amazing episode. And I look forward to bringing you both back real soon.
Thanks, Jimmy.
You got it. Enjoy your evening, ladies and gentlemen, or whatever time it might be in your area. All right. Take care. Bye-bye.